The Orcs Empire was a massive and powerful civilization that spanned across many planets. Their technology was unmatched, their armies feared by all who faced them. And at the heart of this empire was their princess, Jorah. She was known throughout the galaxy for her beauty, her strength, and her terrifying reputation. But when she arrived on Earth, things went differently than expected. The ship carrying Jorah descended through the Earth's atmosphere, its size dwarfing any aircraft the humans had ever seen. It landed in a secluded area, chosen by Earth's leaders to avoid chaos. But as the door of the ship opened, something unusual happened. The crowd, composed of high-ranking officials, soldiers, and diplomats, took a step back. Their faces were filled with awe, but there was also fear in their eyes. The soldiers, who were trained to face the most dangerous threats, seemed nervous. The bravest of them all couldn't help but look away. It was as if the mere presence of the princess made them feel small, insignificant. Jorah stepped out of her ship, her long silver hair flowing like a wave, her eyes glowing with a soft but intimidating light. She was breathtakingly beautiful, but her beauty was not her most striking feature. It was the overwhelming presence she carried, something that made even the air around her feel heavy. She was a living legend, and her every movement seemed calculated, as though she had already conquered worlds with the slightest of gestures. As she stood on Earth, she looked around. The humans around her were in awe, but there was no applause, no welcoming cheers, just silence. She could feel the weight of their gaze, their fear and respect all tangled together. For a moment, she felt like an outsider, an alien in a foreign land. Jorah had been sent here to negotiate peace. She had been trained for diplomacy, for leadership, for making difficult decisions that affected entire civilizations. Yet, standing here in front of these humans, she couldn't help but wonder why they were so afraid. They knew of her people, their technology, and their dominance in the galaxy. But that was not why they feared her. No, it was something else. Perhaps it was the rumors, the whispers of her power. Or maybe it was simply the idea of an alien princess arriving to claim what they had worked so hard to protect. Jorah's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps. She looked up, and through the crowd, she saw him. A man just as soldiers stepped forward. His uniform was ordinary, unlike the polished, powerful attire of the officials surrounding her. He was young, perhaps no older than 25. His eyes locked onto hers with no hesitation. He didn't flinch, didn't turn away. He just stood there, his stance straight and unshaken, as if he were not looking at the princess of a powerful alien empire, but at any ordinary person. The others in the crowd gasped. How could this man stand before her without fear? Didn't he know who she was? Didn't he know the kind of power she commanded? Jorah felt an unusual sensation stir inside her. She had always been feared, always admired from a distance. But here, in this foreign place, there was one human who refused to treat her like a goddess or a monster. He treated her like a person, Adam. The soldier didn't speak. His eyes said everything. He wasn't intimidated, nor was he overawed. He simply watched her, as though he expected her to speak first. Jorah blinked. There was something about this human that intrigued her. His calmness, his composure, were like nothing she had encountered before. Even the strongest of her people would have quaked before her presence. But this human soldier, Adam, did not even flinch. Was he brave? Or was he simply ignorant of the danger he was in? She couldn't tell. As the silence stretched, Jorah stepped forward. She had been trained in diplomacy, but this moment was different. She had expected resistance, yes, but not like this. She had expected fear, and instead, she found curiosity. It was something she had never felt before in the presence of others. She was used to being a symbol of power, but Adam's unwavering gaze was like a challenge she couldn't ignore. "You are not afraid of me," Jorah finally said, her voice calm but heavy with the weight of her words. Adam didn't flinch. He didn't even seem to blink as he replied, "Why should I be?" The crowd behind them seemed to hold its breath. Everyone was waiting for Jorah's reaction. Would she see this as a sign of disrespect? Would she punish this soldier for his audacity? But Jorah did not. Instead, she found herself intrigued. For the first time in her life, someone saw her for more than just a princess. the ruler, the conqueror. They saw her as someone ordinary. Jorah's mind raced as she looked at Adam, trying to understand what made him so different. Was it just his courage? Or was there something more to him? Something she could not yet see. The moment stretched, and for the first time, Jorah wasn't sure of what would come next. Jorah's gaze lingered on Adam, her mind swirling with thoughts she couldn't quite process. The air between them was charged, a strange tension pulling them closer yet keeping them apart. The humans around them murmured among themselves, their whispers filled with confusion and disbelief. How could a soldier, a mere man, stand so defiantly in front of an alien princess? Jorah stood tall, trying to maintain her composure. She had been trained for moments like this, moments when diplomacy and power intertwined. But Adam wasn't like the others. He wasn't intimidated by her reputation or her alien form. The more she studied him, the more she realized he didn't even seem to understand the danger he was in. Adam's stare remained unwavering. His eyes, though dark, held a glimmer of something unexpected, respect, perhaps, or curiosity. Jorah couldn't decide, and she wasn't sure she liked the feeling. After a long silence, she spoke again, her voice steady but carrying an edge of challenge. You have no fear of me. Adam didn't hesitate. Why should I fear someone who's here for peace? Jorah raised an eyebrow, intrigued by his response. Peace. It wasn't a word she was used to hearing in connection with her people. Her species, the Orcs, were conquerors. They didn't come in search of peace. They came to dominate. And yet, here was a human soldier, speaking of peace so casually, as though it was something that could simply be negotiated between two sides. There was no malice in his words, no defiance. Just simple, blunt honesty. Jorah took a step closer, her footsteps making no sound against the grass beneath her boots. You think you can trust me then? Adam's lips twitched, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. I think you're just another person, like everyone else, and I think you're here for something other than war. Jorah's heart skipped a beat. Her mind flashed back to her mission, peace. She had been sent here to negotiate with the humans, but she couldn't shake the feeling that her presence, her very being, was something that demanded fear, not trust. Yet Adam's words stirred something in her, a curiosity that she hadn't expected. Tell me, human, she said, her voice softening just a little. What is it that you hope to achieve here? Why stand before me when others would cower? Adam's smile grew slightly. Maybe because I'm not afraid to see what's beneath all the fear and power. You're not what I expected. I thought aliens would be, well, different. Jorah's eyes narrowed as she processed his words. And what were you expecting? He shrugged, his confidence unshaken. I don't know, something more. Alien, something that would make me think twice about standing here. He looked around at the group of soldiers and officials. But it's just you, isn't it? Her mind raced. Jorah had expected to be feared, expected the humans to tremble at her power, at her beauty, at the weight of her position. But Adam had seen through all of that. He didn't see an alien princess. He saw just another person standing before him. For a moment, Jorah didn't know how to respond. The other humans continued to watch, waiting for something, anything to happen. They expected her to react with anger, with power, or perhaps with violence. But Jorah felt an odd calmness inside her. She didn't want to frighten him. No, this wasn't what she wanted. She was here to build something, to create an understanding between their two worlds. Adam took another step closer. His boldness was both infuriating and intriguing to Jorah. She could feel the weight of the moment, a single step away from everything changing. You've never seen a human like me, Adam continued, his voice quiet but firm. And I've never met anyone like you. Jorah took a deep breath, feeling the shift in the air between them. There was something in his words, something genuine. And for the first time in a long time, she wasn't sure how to proceed. The warrior within her told her to remain distant, to stay in control. But the diplomat inside her, something she had buried for so long, wanted to find out more. The tension between them remained thick, yet oddly peaceful. Jorah could feel the gaze of the crowd on her, waiting for her to make the next move. But she had no idea what to do. She had never been in a situation like this. No one had ever dared to treat her as an equal before. Adam, she said, her voice low, you do not fear me. Why? Adam looked her in the eyes, his answer as simple as his earlier ones. Because I know that peace is stronger than fear. Jorah felt something stir inside her. She didn't know if it was hope or something more dangerous. But she knew one thing for certain. The path ahead was not as clear as it once seemed. The human before her had shown her something she had never expected. Something human. And that was a problem. Or maybe, just maybe, it was the solution she had been looking for all along. The morning after their first encounter, Jorah stood before the gathered humans. Her ship loomed silently behind her, an ominous reminder of her power. She had decided, after careful consideration, that Adam's words warranted something more than curiosity. It was time to test his courage, his resolve, and his understanding of what it meant to face a true threat. She turned to the assembly of Earth's leaders and military officers, her voice cutting through the air with a command that made even the strongest men flinch. There is a human who dares to challenge the fear that my presence brings, she said, her gaze fixed on Adam, who was standing amongst the crowd. It is time to see if his bravery is truly as strong as his words. A murmur ran through the crowd, but Adam stood tall, his eyes unwavering. He stepped forward, stepping out of the crowd as if he had known this moment would come. He didn't look at the others, didn't seek approval. His focus was on her, and only her. Jorah gestured toward a vast, open field where a massive creature stood. Chained and roaring in anger, the creature was a raccoon warbest, fierce, dangerous, and capable of tearing through entire battalions. Its scales shimmered like dark metal, and its claws were sharp enough to slice through armor. Earth's scientists had been working for days to contain it, but nothing had prepared them for the raw strength of the creature. This, Jorah declared, is the trial. The creature before you is no ordinary beast. It has been bred for war, for destruction. I want to see if you are truly brave enough to face it. Adam's eyes followed the creature's every movement. The warbest snarled, its eyes glowing with a primal rage. It had been contained, but it wasn't tame. The air around it pulsed with a dangerous energy. Jorah continued, her tone cold. If you succeed, you'll prove your worth not just to me, but to your entire planet. If you fail, well, you will not be the first to fall. The crowd fell silent, their eyes on Adam. This wasn't just a fight, it was a test of survival, a challenge that could easily turn deadly. But Adam didn't flinch. Instead, he squared his shoulders and stepped forward. I'll face it, he said, his voice steady. He had no weapons, no armor, nothing to defend himself with but his own strength and willpower. He took a deep breath, focused on the creature, and began to walk toward it. Jorah watched him intently, her mind racing. She had expected him to hesitate, to back down. She had expected fear to seep into his heart. But Adam wasn't like the others. He kept walking, each step bringing him closer to the creature, closer to his possible doom. As he drew near, the warbest roared, lunging forward, its claws slashing through the air with terrifying speed. The humans around them gasped, but Adam didn't even flinch. He ducked under the creature's massive paws, narrowly avoiding the deadly swipe. He moved with agility that surprised Jorah, his focus entirely on the creature in front of him. He didn't stop. He moved like someone who had no fear of death, no fear of failure. Every step he took seemed calculated, precise, as if he had studied the creature's every movement. Jorah had never seen anything like it. Her mind buzzed with questions. How could a human, someone so fragile, move with such certainty in the face of danger? Adam's movements grew bolder. He was learning, adapting quickly, reading the creature, as if he had known it for years. With one swift motion, he dodged another attack, then lunged forward. He grabbed hold of the beast's chain, pulling with all his strength, using his body to subdue the creature. The warbest fought back with all its might, but Adam held his ground, his eyes locked onto the creature's. Jorah stood there, watching him closely. She had expected him to fail, but he was succeeding. Adam was holding his own against a creature bred for war. This wasn't just courage. It was something more. The creature finally slowed, its movements becoming erratic and tired. Adam, panting, but determined, tightened his grip on the chain. With one last pull, he forced the warbest to submit. It collapsed, exhausted and defeated. The silence that followed was deafening. Jorah's gaze lingered on Adam, her heart racing. This human, this soldier, had done the impossible. He had faced a creature that even the strongest warriors feared, and had emerged victorious. The crowd erupted into applause, but Jorah remained still, her mind swirling with thoughts she could barely process. Adam had shown her something she hadn't expected, something that shifted her perception of humans entirely. She had never believed in the power of a single individual to change the course of history. But Adam had just done something that proved her wrong. Her curiosity was no longer just about him. It was about what he represented. In the depths of his courage, Jorah saw the potential for something far greater than a simple alliance. She had never felt this way before, and that frightened her. As Adam stood there, breathing heavily but triumphant, Jorah felt something stir deep within her. What had begun as a test of his courage had turned into a test of her own beliefs, and now she wasn't sure what to do next. In the days following Adam's victory, Jorah found herself thinking about him far more often than she cared to admit. She had sent her delegation to continue the peace talks with Earth's leaders, but her mind wasn't fully there. Her thoughts kept drifting to the soldier who had faced the warbest without hesitation, without fear, and who had, against all odds, come out victorious. It wasn't just his bravery that had intrigued her, it was his presence. There was something about Adam's energy that felt genuine. He was different from the other humans she had met, and more than that, he had treated her like a person, not a symbol. He hadn't feared her, but he also hadn't treated her with the blind admiration others did. There was no awe in his eyes, only respect, a respect that was rare for someone of her status. Jorah found herself seeking out moments to speak with him. She would visit Earth's military base, where Adam was stationed, under the guise of conducting further talks. Each time they met, the conversation was simple at first, discussions of peace, strategy, and diplomacy. But with each meeting, the barrier between them began to erode. They spoke of their lives, their worlds, their hopes for the future. Adam, in his unassuming way, began to share stories of his childhood, of growing up on a small farm, of his family. Jorah listened, captivated by his openness. His world seemed so different from her own, so grounded in simple joys and struggles. But what struck her the most was his quiet humility. Despite all he had accomplished defeating the warbest, standing before a powerful alien princess without fear, he was humble, always placing the focus on others, never himself. Jorah had always been told that strength was the key to everything. Her empire had been built on that principle: strength to conquer, strength to rule. But Adam's strength wasn't in his physical power, it was in his character, his willingness to stand for what he believed in, regardless of the consequences, was a kind of power she had never truly understood. It was late one evening when their conversation turned to more personal matters. Jorah had just finished a meeting with Earth's leaders, and Adam had stayed behind to speak with her, as he often did now. They stood outside, looking up at the stars above. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence between them was comfortable, not awkward. "I never thought I'd be standing here, talking to someone like you," Adam said softly, breaking the silence. "I thought aliens would come to destroy us, to take what we have. But you're different." Jorah turned to him, her expression unreadable. "What do you mean by different?" Adam smiled, a warm, genuine smile that reached his eyes. "You're not like the stories we heard growing up. You're not here to take over, to conquer. You came for peace. And when you faced me, you didn't see me as a threat. You saw me as a person." Jorah's heart skipped a beat. His words echoed in her mind long after he had said them. She had never seen herself in the way Adam described her. She had always been the ruler, the conqueror. But here with him, she felt something else, something she had never allowed herself to feel before: vulnerability. "What do you see when you look at me, Adam?" Jorah asked, her voice quieter than usual. Adam looked at her with sincerity. "I see a person who's been alone for far too long, who's been burdened with expectations and responsibilities. But I also see someone who wants something more than just power. I see someone who wants to change, who wants to understand what it means to live without fear." Jorah's breath caught in her throat. She had never allowed herself to be vulnerable in front of anyone. let alone a human. But Adam's words cut through the walls she had built around herself, the walls she had carefully constructed over years of leadership and isolation. Jorah didn't know what to say. She had always been the one in control, the one who dictated the terms, but with Adam, she felt something different stirring within her, an unfamiliar feeling that made her feel exposed, yet strangely comforted. For the first time in her life, she questioned everything she had been taught. Was strength truly the most important thing, or was there more to life than dominance and control? Adam had shown her that vulnerability, trust, and understanding could be just as powerful, if not more so, than anything her empire had ever taught her. As the days passed, Jorah found herself seeking Adam's company more and more. The peace talks, which had once seemed like her sole purpose, began to feel secondary to something else: the connection she was forming with this human soldier. She had never imagined that she would feel this way, especially not towards someone from a race so different from her own. Yet, the bond between them grew, unexpected and undeniable. But Jorah couldn't ignore the implications of this bond. She was the princess of a mighty empire. Adam was just a soldier, a human who had once been an enemy. What would happen to their connection if the peace talks failed? Would they be forced to choose between their worlds? These questions lingered in her mind, unanswered, as she looked at Adam standing beside her. The stars above seemed to hold all the answers, but for now, she couldn't bring herself to ask them aloud. There was too much at stake, too much uncertainty. Yet, for the first time, she wasn't sure if she was ready to face her future without Adam by her side. The peace talks between the Rukun Empire and Earth were proceeding slower than Jorah had hoped. Every step forward was met with resistance. Every compromise came with a cost. Earth's leaders were wary, unsure if the Rukun were truly here for peace or if they were simply biding their time. But Jorah had no intention of returning home without a deal. Her people needed this alliance, and she had already committed herself to seeing it through. But lately, it wasn't the political tensions that were occupying her thoughts. It was Adam, her feelings for him, which she had tried so hard to suppress, were growing stronger with each passing day. They spoke more often now, not just in the context of diplomacy, but in moments where they were alone, away from the eyes of the officials. In those moments, she began to see Adam not as a soldier, not as a symbol of human resilience, but as something more, someone who challenged her beliefs, who made her question the very foundation of her existence. Yet, as their connection deepened, something else started to surface. Jorah had noticed it first during one of their more recent conversations. Adam had spoken of his past with a strange hesitation, a carefulness in his words that she had not observed before. At first, she had brushed it off as nothing more than the discomfort of a soldier, but something about the way he avoided certain topics made her curious. It was late one evening when Jorah finally confronted him. They were standing in a quiet room inside the military base. The hum of the city outside barely audible. The room was dimly lit, and the only sound was the distant whisper of the wind outside. Adam stood by the window, looking out at the city, his arms folded. He hadn't noticed her approach, but when he turned, their eyes met. There was an intensity in his gaze, a quiet strength that Jorah had come to recognize. Adam. Jorah began, her voice firm but soft. There is something. You're not telling me. I can see it. It's in the way you speak, the way you look away when certain topics come up. What is it that you are hiding? Adam's expression faltered for a moment, the mask of calm that he usually wore slipping slightly. He didn't speak. Right away, his gaze flickering toward the ground before he met her eyes once more. I'm not hiding anything, Jorah, he said, though his voice lacked the usual certainty. Jorah stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. Don't lie to me. I've seen the way you react when the topic of your past comes up. What happened to you, Adam? What aren't you telling me? For a long moment, Adam didn't respond. Jorah stood there, watching him, waiting for him to open up. Finally, Adam let out a sigh, his shoulders sagging as if the weight of something heavy had been lifted off his chest. He turned back to the window, looking out at the stars for a long time before he spoke again. It's not a story I'm proud of, he began, his voice low and tinged with regret. When I was younger, I was part of a group that fought against the government. I wasn't fighting for peace or freedom. I was just angry. I thought I could change things, make a difference. But all I did was cause pain to the people I cared about. I left, disappeared for a while. I thought that if I could just keep my head down, I could start over, build something better. But the past, it doesn't let you forget. It follows you. Jorah listened intently, her heart pounding. She had always assumed that Adam's courage came from a place of righteousness, of simple goodness. But now, she was hearing a different side of him, a side that had been scarred by his own mistakes, by the weight of his own decisions. She understood that burden all too well. As a princess, as the heir to the Rukun Empire, she had also lived with the consequences of choices made long before her birth. But why didn't you tell me? Jorah asked, her voice softer now, touched by the vulnerability in his words. Why keep it hidden from me? Adam turned to face her then, his eyes meeting hers with an intensity that caught her off guard. Because I didn't want you to see me the way I see myself. I didn't want you to think I was just some broken soldier, some damaged man who doesn't deserve peace. I don't want my past to define who I am now. Not for you. Not for anyone. Jorah stood there, her mind racing. She had come to know Adam as a man of strength and courage, but this revelation changed everything. He wasn't just the fearless soldier she had admired. He was someone who had fought battles within himself, battles that had shaped him in ways Jorah had never expected. She stepped forward, closer to him now, her voice low and steady. Adam, your past doesn't change who you are now. It doesn't change the courage you've shown. And it doesn't change the way I see you. Adam's eyes softened, and for a brief moment, Jorah saw something else in him, a kind of relief, as if he had finally allowed himself to breathe. I never thought I'd hear that from anyone, he said quietly. Not after everything I've done. Jorah placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch gentle but firm. We all have things we regret, but it's what we choose to do next that matters. Adam looked at her then, his gaze shifting to something deeper, something more than just gratitude. Jorah felt her heart skip a beat as she realized that this moment between them was more than just an understanding. It was a turning point, and she wasn't sure what would happen next. But one thing was certain, their connection had changed. It had evolved into something far more complex, something that neither of them had anticipated. The peace talks had stalled, despite Jorah's best efforts. The humans were growing increasingly distrustful of the Rukun Empire. Their representatives demanded more assurances, more transparency, and more power in the negotiations. Jorah had expected resistance, but not like this. Earth's leaders were starting to push for harsher terms that Jorah knew her people would never accept. The room was tense as she sat across from the human ambassadors, their eyes cold and calculating. She had been through countless negotiations in her lifetime, but none like this, none where the very future of her empire, and perhaps the fate of her people, hung in the balance. The humans were questioning her every move, testing her resolve, and Jorah was starting to feel cornered. I don't think you understand the gravity of this situation, Princess Jorah, one of the Earth's top diplomats said, his voice sharp. You're asking us to trust you and your empire, but all we've seen are your forces, your weapons, and your ability to dominate. What guarantee do we have that you won't betray us? Jorah's jaw clenched. She had expected distrust, but this was more than that. The humans had crossed a line. They were questioning her integrity, her honor. She stood from the table, her silver hair falling like a veil around her shoulders as she took a step forward, her presence commanding the room. You speak of betrayal, but it is not I who have come to you with demands. I have offered you peace, and yet you test me at every turn. The humans in the room shifted uncomfortably, but Jorah wasn't finished. Do not mistake my desire for peace for weakness. You would do well to remember that my people have crushed entire civilizations. We do not negotiate from a place of fear, we negotiate from a place of power. The room went silent, but the words stung more than she had anticipated. She knew the humans were afraid, but the truth was, she was starting to fear what this might cost. Her empire was built on the foundation of strength, but the very essence of her being, the values she had been taught her entire life, were beginning to clash with the vision of peace she had come to share with Adam. Her mind wandered back to him. Where was Adam in all of this? The man who had once stood before her with unwavering conviction, the one who had shown her that even in the darkest moments, there was a path to understanding. But lately, he had been distant, avoiding her in the halls, his words curt and impersonal. Jorah knew something was wrong, but she didn't understand what. Had her bond with him started to fray under the pressure of these talks? As the meeting came to a close, Jorah left the room in a storm of frustration and confusion. She needed to speak to Adam. She needed to understand where they stood. What had happened to the connection they once shared? She found him outside, standing alone in the courtyard. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the ground, and the air felt heavy with the unspoken tension between them. Adam was staring at the horizon, his arms crossed, as though he were deep in thought. Jorah approached cautiously, not wanting to break the fragile silence. But the moment she stepped closer, Adam turned to her, his expression unreadable. "You've been avoiding me," she said quietly, her voice soft but firm. Adam looked at her, but there was a coldness in his eyes that hadn't been there before. "I haven't been avoiding you, Jorah. I've just been thinking." "Thinking about what?" she asked, the words laced with a mixture of frustration and concern. He hesitated, as though weighing his response. "About the talks, about the future, about everything we've been through. This isn't what I signed up for, Jorah. I thought we were trying to build something together. But now it feels like we're just playing a dangerous game." Jorah's heart tightened at his words. She hadn't realized how much the pressure of these talks had affected him. Adam had always been a man of action, a man who believed in the power of individual choice. But she could see the weight of the conflict in his eyes now. He was struggling, torn between his loyalty to her and his own sense of what was right. "I don't want to play a game, Adam," she replied softly, stepping closer to him. "I want peace. I want to build something real. But the humans, they don't trust us. And my own people, they don't understand why I'm willing to risk everything for this." Adam looked away, his jaw clenched. "The humans aren't the only ones you're risking everything for, Jorah. You've changed. I've seen it in you. You're not the same person I first met. And I don't know if I can keep up with who you're becoming." His words stung. Jorah felt a sharp pang in her chest, the weight of his doubt sinking into her like a stone. "I haven't changed," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm still the same princess who has always believed in strength, in power. But I also believe in something else now, something I never thought possible." Adam's eyes met hers, searching, trying to find something, anything in her gaze that would make sense of this. But Jorah didn't know what she was searching for herself: peace, redemption, or something more personal, something deeper that neither of them could put into words. "I don't know if we can fix this, Jorah," Adam said quietly, his voice tinged with regret. "I don't know if we can fix this us." Jorah stood there, her mind racing. The breaking point had arrived, and she didn't know which direction to go. She had been so focused on bringing peace to two worlds that she had forgotten the most important truth of all: peace begins within. As Adam turned to walk away, Jorah's heart wrenched. She didn't know if their bond could survive the pressures of these talks, but she knew one thing: if she was to find peace, it had to start with the one person who could truly understand her, herself. And that was the hardest truth of all. Jorah stood alone on the balcony of the council building, overlooking the bustling city below. The stars had begun to appear in the sky, their soft glow the only thing that seemed certain in a world teetering on the edge of chaos. The peace talks had reached an impasse. Her people were demanding that she return home, that she take control and end the negotiations. The humans, meanwhile, were growing more desperate by the day, pushing for terms that would make it impossible for her empire to agree. And Adam was no longer the man who had once stood boldly beside her. He had retreated into himself, his words colder, his actions more distant. He had stopped seeing her as the princess of the Rukun Empire and had begun to see her as something else entirely: a ruler who was willing to sacrifice anything for peace, even if it meant sacrificing the very things that made her human. The sound of footsteps behind her broke through her thoughts, and Jorah turned, her heart skipping a beat when she saw Adam standing there. He looked tired, worn from the endless pressure, but there was something else in his eyes: a determination, a finality that she hadn't seen before. "Jorah," Adam said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of everything they had been through. "I've been thinking about the talks, about you and me, about everything. I think it's time we both make a decision." Jorah's heart raced as she stepped toward him, the tension between them palpable. "What decision?" "The decision about what kind of future we want," Adam replied, his eyes searching hers. "Do you want to keep fighting for this peace, for something that might not even exist? Or do you want to walk away, live for yourself, for what you believe in?" The question hit her harder than any battle she had ever fought. She had dedicated everything, her strength, her heart, her very soul to the idea of peace. But Adam's words made her realize something she hadn't fully acknowledged before. Peace couldn't be built on the sacrifices of those who were unwilling to live for it, who were afraid to change. Peace wasn't just a negotiation of power. It was about trust, understanding, and the willingness to take risks. "You're asking me to choose between my people and what I feel is right," Jorah said, her voice shaky but firm. "But what if I can't choose? What if peace means losing everything I've ever known?" Adam stepped closer, his hand reaching out as though to touch her, but he stopped himself, unsure. "What if peace means gaining something better? A future where you don't have to carry the weight of your empire on your shoulders, where you don't have to sacrifice everything you've ever been taught to value?" Jorah looked away, her thoughts swirling in a storm of confusion. She had spent her whole life being taught that strength was the most important thing, that to survive, she had to dominate, to lead with power and fear. But now, standing before Adam, the man who had once challenged her to see beyond her armor, she began to wonder if that strength had made her blind. "I don't know if I can walk away from my people," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I don't know if I can leave everything I've ever known." Adam stepped forward, his voice softer now, but still carrying the weight of his conviction. "And what if, by walking away, you save both your people and your future? What if you choose something that feels right, even if it's not what anyone else expects?" Jorah's heart pounded in her chest. The world she had known, the responsibility she had inherited, seemed so far away now. The pressure, the expectations, the fear, it was all suffocating her. And yet, here was Adam, offering her a different kind of future, a future where she could be more than just the princess of a conquering empire. She closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. She had never been faced with such a choice, such a moment of vulnerability. To choose peace was to risk everything she had ever built, but to choose the status quo was to condemn herself to a life of endless fighting, of endless fear. "I can't promise you that I know the right answer," Jorah said softly, opening her eyes to meet Adam's gaze. "But I can promise you that I will try. I'll try to build a future where peace doesn't come at the cost of who we are. And maybe that's the kind of future I've been searching for all along." Adam's expression softened, and for the first time in weeks, Jorah saw the man she had once known, the one who had stood before her without fear, without hesitation, the man who had challenged her to be better, to be more than what she had been taught to be. As he reached out and took her hand, Jorah realized something she hadn't allowed herself to feel before, that sometimes the greatest strength comes not from fighting for what you want, but from having the courage to walk away from what you've always known. Together, they faced the uncertain future, knowing that whatever came next, they would face it as equals, not as enemies or rulers, but as to people willing to take a risk for something greater than themselves. The decision had been made, and with it, the true battle for peace began, not just between nations, but within their hearts.